Hello, good evening. JD Center of Art is delighted to collaborate with the India International Center for its Meet the Artist program. JDC is envisioned as a unique art center that aims to preserve and exhibit its large collection of folk, tribal, traditional, and contemporary art, all under one roof. It is currently under construction in Bhubaneswar, Odisha. Meet the Artist program, or MTA as we call it, is a permanent program of JDCA where invited artists, craftspersons, or scholars share their work, experiences, and insights through an illustrated talk. Since 2001, 255 such MTAs have taken place on the second Saturday of every month. Currently, our sessions are being held online. R.G. Singh, Secretary of Ramson's Kala Pratishthan, is a guest for the 256th Meet the Artist and will speak on magnificent Mysore paintings. The illustrated talk will briefly introduce the Mysore School of Painting, patronized by the King of Mysore, Krishna Raja Vadiyar III, or Muhammadi as he was called, and his successor, Chamaraja Vadiyar, and who I'm saying it rightly, RG, you can correct me later, and Krishna Raja Vadiyar IV. The subjects, colors, compositions will be illustrated in his talk. The Royal Atelier at the Mysore Palace and the celebrated artists will also be highlighted in his talk. Few specimens from the Ram Singh Museum and some fine paintings from the private collection across the country have also been included in the talk. The Rama Mandira tradition of Mysore and a few extraordinary portraits will also be shown. R.G. Singh, as he's called, is the Secretary of Ramson's Kala Pratishthan, Mysore, an art trust. He has been collecting Mysore paintings since 1987 and has been instrumental in patronizing the revival of the style. A sizable collection is housed in a private museum of the trust, the Ram Singh Museum. He has lectured extensively on art and heritage and written several monographs and organized exhibitions. He heads Mysore's well-known handicraft store Ramson's, which organizes the annual traditional doll exhibition, Bomba Mane, since 2005, and Krida Kaushalya is the Biennale of traditional board games that's being held since 2007 to promote traditional art and craft and heritage. I have a personal note here also. I've known RG as he's called. It's a mystery. I don't know what the R and the G still stands for in the years I've known him. But I was working on a large installation for the Bangalore airport, and we were doing a Mysore painting installation, and I met RG, and it was such an amazing experience to see Mysore and understanding about the painting style through his eyes. And I still remember it very fondly, and I owe him a lot for my own insights into Mysore painting. So thank you very much, RG, and over to Jatin Das to say a few words, and then on to you, RG, after that. Thank you.
Namaskar, Mr. RG. What does RG stand for? What is the full name?
Yes, R is my initial, which is Ram Singh, my father's name, and G is Gnaneshwar, and it's Ram Singh Gnaneshwar Singh.
Ram Singh Gnaneshwar Singh. And as I gather from Siddhartha, that you are originally from Rajasthan.
Yes.
And you are settled in the Karnataka, Mysore state for many generations.
Yes.
And I'm delighted to know about this because there were many people who used to conserve and preserve our tradition, make the collection, pursue the art and craft and the school of painting. And as I mentioned to you a little while ago, that I knew Navalgarh Raja who used to have a miniature school in Jaipur, and he used to sell one work to preserve the rest. So I'm very happy to know about you. And I remember many years ago when I did a mural at the international airport in Bangalore, Siddharth took me to you and you had taken me around the palace. And this is very interesting because I suddenly recollect, I'm also from an old royal state called Mayurbhanj. And the Nepal Raja's aunt was married to Mayurbhanj. And I recollect now, about 25 people came with her. The cook, the gardener, this, that, and also artists. So earlier what used to happen, that when a royalty, you are in the proximity to Tanjore, Tanjavur as they say, and you're in Mysore, the schools are very similar and yet a distinction. So there was a lot of give and take between Bengal and Orissa, between Rajasthan schools of thought, of paintings. And because when they got married or they shared their family, they took a complete entourage of people, including artists. This was a fantastic thing. And Mr. R.J. Singh, I'm very delighted and happy to know, because I'm very depressed and sad these days. A lot of our tradition is disappearing. They are being spoiled. And happy to know that today you're presenting this at the JD Center of Art in collaboration with India International Center in Delhi. Just to say that we have tried, I built up a collection over 60 years of various kinds of handicraft, handloom, objects, whether it's traditional or contemporary, whatever I saw, if I liked a piece, I used to collect. And I didn't think of money, whether I have enough in my pocket or not. And that was purely from my sale of painting, hence the JD Center of Art. So, so we are also in the same journey. And please also mention that the Mysore school, what is the, for the viewers, for the listeners, that the Mysore school and Tanjavur school. And is there any other schools like the Patachitra painters of Orissa? Then you have the Kalamkari in Andhra and things like that. There are a lot of similarity, like Bali. Bali paintings are also in the proximity to Orissa's Patachitra. So if you can kindly elaborate a bit about if there are any other schools of painting, schools of thought, similar concepts and handling. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Over to you, Ajit.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and honor to address the distinguished audience of JDCA. And this illustrated the talk that you're going to see will cover several aspects of the Mysore School of Painting, which Siddharth mentioned. And I'm not going to repeat that, because in the course of the talk, you're going to see that. And also, as Jatin Das sir requested me to talk about the other schools of painting which have influenced this Mysore School of Art, I'm going to just name the different schools that have been influenced from the Vijayanagar school, because that is the school from where all these different styles have stemmed or have sprung from. And right away we begin this talk, illustrated talk, with a slide which is a dedication to Krishnaraj Wadeyar III. He was the 22nd Maharaja of Mysore, and in the course of this talk, you are going to see the magnificent specimens that were created during his tenure. And We are also going to see some paintings not only from across the country, but also a few specimens from different places across the globe. The history of the Mysore School of Painting, this primarily was prevalent and promoted by the Mysore Royal Court during the 19th and the 20th century. Though the roots of the style are said to be in Vijayanagar School of Painting, we do not have any surviving specimens of paintings that were produced in Mysore between 1610 till the mid 18th century. The only surviving specimens that are there before the rule of Mummudi are the murals on the walls of Darya Daulat Bagh Palace at Srirangapatna. This was the palace of Tipu Sultan, who was the ruler of Mysore before Krishnaraj Wadayar III. We also have some very beautiful specimen from the ceiling mural of the Lakshmi Narasimha Swami temple at CB in Tumkur district. This is about an hour's journey from Bangalore. This also belongs to the era of Tipu Sultan, because the person who built this temple was a commander in Tipu's army. And next we move on to the murals at the Jain Mutt. It's known as the Mathada Basdi at Shravanbelagola in Hassan district of Karnataka. These are the specimens that we have as reference before the advent of Mummudi and before the patronization of the school by the Wadayar dynasty. We'll just take a quick look at the way, the reason why artists, migrated from the medieval Karnataka Empire. The capital was Vijayanagara, and in the Battle of Talikote at 1565, where the combined armies of the Bahmani sultans and, of course, the combined Muslim armies ransacked this medieval town because of its immense wealth. And of course, one of the casualties is the artists who had to move to safer and peaceful places in different directions. This is just a small, this is a map which gives you an idea about the places where the artists migrated. This is just a small sample. They moved in other directions as well, but we are only concerned about the movement from Vijayanagar to Srirangapatna to Mysore. And what you're seeing here is from Hampi, that is Vijayanagara, which is marked on the top of your screen. They moved to Ganjam, which is in Srirangapatna, and then to Mysore. I'll tell you why we have mentioned Ganjam in the course of my talk. And this is the place, Ganjam in Srirangapatna, where the artists moved. They moved from Hampi to a place called Kinhala, then to Chitradurga, then to Penukonda in Andhra Pradesh, Sirain again in Karnataka, and then Turvaikere. And these were secure and peaceful places because there were large forts, and the artists took refuge in the forts. And also Srirangapatna had a very mighty fort. And in 1610, the king of Mysore, who was a vassal of the, who was a feudatory of the Vijayanagar kings, Rajavadayar captures the island citadel of Srirangapatna and wrests it from Tirumala Raya II, who is the viceroy of Vijayanagar. And Rajavadayar continues all the traditions. He establishes a colony for the migrating artists who had taken shelter at Chandragiri. This is in present day Andhra Pradesh, at Chandragiri near Tirupati. And then he gets them to Ganjam. He also builds a temple for their deity Nimishamba, which still stands today, and it is controlled by the government of Karnataka. And you see here the goddess Nimishamba Devi, who is worshipped by the traditional Chitragar community. The turning point of this school is the death of Tipu Sultan in the 4th Mysore War. There were 4 wars altogether, which were known as the Anglo-Mysore Wars. And on 4th May 1799, Tipu was killed in the last battle. And then the kingdom of Mysore, under the treaty with the British and the royal family of Mysore, the Hindu royal family of Mysore, the Wadayars, it was given back to them. And then begins relatively a very, very peaceful transition. From 1799 till 1947, we had 4 kings who ruled and who patronized the Mysore style of painting. Of course, Tipu Sultan also patronized the school, because that is very evident from the palaces that he built at Mysore and Bangalore, where there are remnants, and of course there are large murals also of that period. And the same thing was copied by Krishnaraj Wadayar at Mysore. Some of the fragments of those paintings were copied at the Mysore Palace, that is the Jagan Mohan Palace, not the main palace, the Jagan Mohan Palace. And this is Krishnaraj Wadayar, the third, who was a child of 5 years, who was coronated. Onto your screen, you see in folded hands is the Diwan of Mysore, loosely translated the Prime Minister Purnaya. And of course, we also see the British resident seated in a wooden chair on the left-hand side of the child king. One of the treaties of the pact with the British and the Wadayars was that the capital should be shifted from Srirangapatna to Mysore, because they were afraid that the local rulers might regroup at the island citadel. And in the treaty was also very important points in the treaty, where that the army will be disbanded, the Mysore Anche, that is the postal system, will be disbanded, and of course also the Mysore monetary system will be disbanded, and the army cantonment was moved to Bangalore, and the capital was shifted to Mysore. And from here begins our fantastic journey of the magnificent Mysore paintings. A very peaceful Mysore kingdom offered artists shelter, peace, and royal patronage. Over the time, the artists, imbibed the sensibilities of their new home and blended into the cultural scape of Mysore. Their art was influenced by the lifestyle of royalty, the citizenry, the thought system, the aesthetic values of Mysore, and thus it organically developed into a unique school of painting, retaining a few fundamental techniques and skills which can be seen in its sister school of paintings. As Jatin Das sir requested me, I'm listing out the sister schools of painting. It is Tanjavur. Then we have the Surpur style of painting, or it was also known as Shorapur. This is in the northern part of Karnataka at Gulbarga. Then the Madurai school, of course, it is known as the Nayak school, but it is basically derived from the same style. Then we have the Trishnapalli school, which is seen at some of the very large temples in the Tanjavur belt of Tamil Nadu. Then we had the now defunct Kadapa style of painting. Then we also have lost the Tirupati school of painting, which is no longer practiced. In Karnataka, we have lost the Holalgundi style of painting. Of course, just a few monasteries and temples scattered here and there have surviving specimens of the Holalgundi school. Then, of course, if we stretch it a little further, the Kerala mural school, the Cheriyal style of Telangana, present-day Telangana, and of course, the Kinnal style of painting from Karnataka. We move on to the cultural renaissance. You see here in the slide, Mumdi, directing an artist to paint. Of course, this painting is by Manish Verma. This just gives you an idea as to what kind of patronage Mumdi gave. And artists from places such as Turvaikere, Chitradurga, Javagal, Shivamogga moved to Mysore after the death of Tipu Sultan. Now, I'm able to tell you these names precisely because the artists added the name of the place of their origin to their individual names. We'll see that in the course of this presentation. He commissioned, that is Mumdi commissioned artists to paint in all formats of its repertoire. His interest in literature, music, dance, painting, architecture, astrology, astronomy, puzzles, board games, manifested into a very, very, robust and strong movement. From the surviving specimens of Mysore's board games and puzzles and then paintings in museums across the world, it gives you a fair idea that his long rule from 1799 to 1868, 69 years of rule, the kind of patronage he gave is immense. And the reasons are quite evident. We are not going to discuss those reasons because he was just a nominal ruler without administrative responsibilities. And there was a British resident here, and that helped Mumdi to concentrate on the cultural renaissance of Mysore. An offshoot of this cultural renaissance of Mysore is the Rama Mandira tradition. This is the concept of a community hall. It became a function hall for small family events in a particular community. And in the evenings or during festivals, it became a place where bhajans were sung. And it continues to this day. Most of the Rama Mandiras are community based and they carry the name of the community which owns it or which established the Rama Mandira. It was very customary for the Rama Mandira to have a Mysore painting of the coronation of Rama as the altarpiece. And many Rama Mandiras have paintings which are either gifted or commissioned by the devotees of that Rama Mandira or by the person who established the Rama Mandira, and many of the Rama Mandiras for which the land was given by the royal family also got gift of Mysore style paintings from the palace. And many well-to-do, wealthy citizens whom we can call as rich citizens supported the arts by commissioning artworks for their homes and the Rama Mandira. And with almost every house having at least one Mysore painting, the city of Mysore was like a city of paintings. This is, I'm quoting this from the book written by the famous musicologist Mysore Vasudevacharya. He has written this line, and we can tell that the Rama Mandiras were like mini galleries displaying Mysore paintings or living galleries displaying Mysore paintings. Here is a view of the Bidaram Krishnappa's Sri Prasanna Sita Rama Mandira. Bidaram Krishnappa, whose portrait you see right below the portrait of Vishnu, and just above the performing musician. He was a court artist during the reign of Krishnaraj Vadayar IV. He traveled across South India to most of the royal courts performing there. He collected the money and has built this Ram Mandira, which houses about 60 paintings. And of course, he was a musician. He was able to do it. But we also have, ordinary citizens, very devoutly building and patronizing Rama Mandiras. We see here a Rama Mandira that is named Kattige Boralinganna Navara Rama Mandira. Now, Kattige is, the traditional staff that is held. It's a royal standard that, accompanies the king when he walks into the temple or goes on a royal visit. And in Kannada, it is called a kattige. It is usually made of wood and covered with silver. So perhaps this person who built this was employed by one of the kings. Perhaps it is Chamaraj Vadayar X, from the style of the architecture and the period in which it was built. But we are sure that he was an employee of the palace and who carried the royal staff or the royal standard. As I told you earlier, that most of these have musical programs, and you can see here, this is a very unusual Rama Mandira on the first floor. This is in the heart of Mysore city, in the area that was populated by merchants who supplied grains and pulses and oils to the palace as well as the citizens. And because the space was at a premium and this was in the heart of the city, this Rama Mandira is on the first floor, and right below it are a dozen shops that sell rice and pulses. And this is Rama Mandira has been built collectively by the Kunchitigas, which is a merchant community. And it's at a place called Santepet in Mysore. And this comes alive during the annual Rama Navami. What you're seeing here is in performance. While the worship is going on, you have musicians performing for Rama, and we also have the audience there. We'll just take a quick look at the technique of the painting. After the preparation of the ground, that is the canvas or the vasli or paper, a rough sketch is drawn. A trace, which is a template, is used if it is a reproduction of a popular subject. Here, what you're seeing is a popular subject in the Mysore School of Painting, that is the Panchamukhi Anjaneya, the five-headed Anjaneya. And the actual technique is about, we just shown it in 5 stages. Fine drawing from the rough sketch or template is made. The farthest object like the sky, hill, lake are painted first. Then the secondary figures like animals, minor deities are painted, followed by the central main figure. Detailing of ornaments and faces are done, that is the stage 3. Gesso work and gold application is done if it is required by the patron, that is stage number 4. And finally, the gold leaf application and the line drawing, is done with a fine brush, and the word or the technique that is used, it is known as the Jiva Rekhe, that is the final work. And we we move on to the colors that were used. They were either mineral or vegetable based, and they were usually vermilion, green, chrome yellow, yellow ochre, Indian red, white lead, crimson, amber, black, indigo, and gambas. Here we have a painting from the 1850s, which actually shows you all the colors that are mentioned on the right side of your screen. A very unusual painting, which is having all the colors, basic colors that were used in the Mysore School of Painting. The oeuvre of the Mysore style includes a wide range of media and genres, and its repertoire includes murals. Here you see a mural from the Ambujavalli shrine in the Mysore Palace premises. This is the temple of the Shvetavaraha Swami, and this is a mural at the shrine dedicated to the consort of the Lord. Then we have miniatures. This is a miniature from the collection of Kuldeep Singh. Right now it is housed at the Prince of Wales Museum. And the subject is Anubhava Mantapa. And this is a very small sized painting. It is 20 inches by 24 inches. And you can see the profusion of details and the number of characters who have been accommodated in this painting. It shows Allama Prabhu on the Shunya Simhasana right on the top, and all the great devotees that belong to the sect founded by Basaveshwara in the 12th century. The Veerashaiva cult that was founded by Basaveshwara in the 12th century. We move on to this miniature. This is a royal couple in worship. This is a painting at the Karnataka Chitrakala Parishad in Bangalore. This is probably Mummadi Krishnaraj Wadeyar and his wife, because we have not been able to positively identify the characters in the painting, because his son-in-law and one of his sons from his minor queen looked and dressed deceptively similar to Mummadi Krishnaraj Wadeyar, and also a couple of his Palegars who were related to the royal family also dressed in similar costumes and turbans. So it is quite difficult to identify who this person is unless we definitely find painting with the legend. And what is unique about this painting is the Vrishaba Arudha Murti, that is Shiva and Parvati seated on the bull. And this is actually still in worship at the Mysore Palace. And perhaps the artist drew inspiration from the actual piece that is in worship, and also the pillars and the arches, what you see. This is still as it is. You can see it in the old section of the Mysore Palace. This is again a very beautiful specimen from the Mysore School of Painting. This is at the Salarjung Museum at Hyderabad, and this is a miniature. You see an elderly gentleman seated, and perhaps this is a visiting couple come here to meet this elderly gentleman. What is unique about this painting is you can see the lady, she's preparing tambula, that is pan. She is, crushing the betel nuts, and you can look at the detailing of the sari, the jewelry, and of course the textiles that were prevalent at that time. What is very unique about Mummadi and the successor Chamaraj Wadeyar and also Krishnaraj Wadeyar is all these three kings very faithfully recorded all the persons who worked for them through these miniature paintings, and of course portraits, which are portraits, and huge number of albums were created for recording as to who worked in the palace, where they came from, which was the department in which they worked. There were 18 departments in the Mysore palace, which was known as the Athara Kacheri. And during the reign of the kings Mummadi Krishnaraj Wadeyar and Chamaraj Wadeyar the 10th, the recording was done through miniature paintings. But during the reign of Nalwadi Krishnaraj Wadeyar, there were group photographs which were hand tinted or hand painted. Of course, we're not going to show that. Here we see a painting of a person by name Kittanna, and very respectfully it says Khajane Munshi Kittanna Navaru. Now Khajane is the treasury. He is an accountant at the treasury. Munshi is a Persian word. Kittanna Navaru. Kittanna is his name. Navaru is an affix, giving him respect, like the Hindi word G. And this is from the collection of Vijay Hagargundgi at Vishwambara. Vijay is a person who has revived the Surpur school of painting, which was extinct for almost 2 centuries. And he also has a large collection of Surpur paintings. Perhaps Siddharth should include him in his next talk for JDCA. We move on to this pencil sketch, and this is for a lithograph printing. There was a very large printing press named Jagadamba Vilas within the Mysore fort, which printed innumerable works. And for that, the litho printing, you required pencil sketches. And this is a pencil sketch, which is an episode from the Ramayana. You can see on your screen on the right hand side, just below, it says DM Kondaya, Palace Painter, Mysore. Of course, he is an artist. He has just written, he's a palace painter. Of course, in the present day, it gives a different connotation. But when you look at this beautiful sketch, on the top left-hand side, you can see the scroll number. It says number 2. This is a clue for the printing and where it should be placed. And even today, sometimes these wonderful sketches come up in the market and are available. And this is a lithograph book. And this is quite a voluminous book. It's known as the Devata Nama Kusuma Manjari. It gives us details about the ritual worship of deities, which of the deities should be worshipped with what are the hymns that are to be chanted when a particular deity is to be invoked. And of course, this book is it also has details about the worship during Dasara, how the throne should be worshipped, what are the weapons that are to be placed on the throne, and when the king sits on the throne, what is the benedictory verses that have to be chanted by the priests. And this is a very comprehensive book, and of course a very rare book that is that once a while shows up in antique shops. We have another here, another genre of the Mysore School of Painting, which is illustrated manuscripts. And of course, there are lots of illustrated manuscripts. And the most famous of them is Sri Tattvanidhi, which is being published by the University of Mysore. And there were 3 volumes of the Sri Tattvanidhi for the Maharaja of Mysore, because the legend clearly states His Highness copy, Her Highness copy, and the Saraswati Bhandar copy. So there are 3 copies. One copy is with the Oriental Research Institute. One copy is in US with a private collector. And the 3rd copy is with the Maharaja of Mysore. And this is a folio from Swarachudamani, which is again a part of Sri Tattvanidhi. And this is in the collection of Vijay Hagargundgi of Gulbarga. Very unique paintings in the Mysore school are these schematic maps of famous pilgrim centers. Of course, we have all the pilgrim centers of not only South India, but Central India and North India. For example, we have schematic maps of Vindhyavasini, then the Tarapeeth, at the Badrika Ashram, Kedarnath. So perhaps like this is an offtake from the Jain tradition, where if you cannot visit a pilgrim center, you can have darshan through a painting, because this schematic map of pilgrim centers, we see the earliest specimens in the Jain school of painting. And we have this beautiful specimen. This is from the Transparency collection of my mentor, Swami Shiva Priyananda. On the right, on the topmost corner onto your right hand is the pilgrim center of left, sorry, I beg your pardon. On the left hand side is the pilgrim temple of Tirupati. In the center is a Sri Rangam, and on the top right hand corner is Melukote. Bottom left is Kanchipuram. In the center is a Prasanna Krishna Swami temple in Mysore, and on to the right and bottom is the Ahobilam temple in Andhra Pradesh. And just to give you an idea, this is how it looks. And in Mysore, there are 2 temples which have painted murals. One is the specimen I showed you earlier of Ambujavalli Shrine, and this is Prasanna Krishna Swami temple. And we have these playing cards, which are known as the Ganjifa cards. And we have also this reverse glass painting technique, which was, I think, was introduced from China. That is what is the belief, is that it came from China to India through traders. And the reverse glass painting is an art form consisting of applying paint to a piece of glass and then weaving the image by turning the glass over and looking through the glass at the image. And the glass painting, these reverse glass paintings are quite unique to South India, and perhaps were inspired by European glass painting and the Chinese glass paintings. There are not many specimens of glass painting in Mysore style. Of course, we do find a lot of glass paintings from in Tanjore school, and of course in the Paithani school. In Mysore school, it is very rare and highly prized. This is a glass painting, reverse glass painting of Lakshmi Narayana, which is very miniature in size, 10 by 12 at the Ram Singh Museum. We move on to the super miniatures that were created during the reign of Krishnaraj Wadiyar III. And this is a very interesting development. Artists started doing portable paintings that were smaller in size and which could be carried from one place to another. This was greatly facilitated by the British influence. Mysore, being a British controlled state at the time, meant that there was easy availability of paper. And that is how they were able to, work on high quality European paper. And these handmade European papers is one of the reasons why many of these paintings have survived to this day in very good condition. This is a painting of, this is a very unique painting. I want you to watch this very closely. This is a Chamundeshwari Avatara, or the different aspects of the goddess Chamundi, who is the patron goddess of Mysore, and of course the Vadayars. And what is very interesting about this painting is when we see a close-up, you can see that the goddess, a powerful goddess, a superwoman goddess is created, and it is the male gods, the deities, who offer her the weapons. And you can see the gods are, happily offering their weapons to Chamundeshwari so that she vanquishes Mahishasura. This is a painting at the Residential Museum of the Palace at Mysore. Another very interesting painting is across South Karnataka. Until the 1960s, it was very prevalent to, offer a sacrifice of buffalo to many of the temples in which the goddesses were the reigning deities. Of course, this has been banned from the 1970s, but this is a very interesting painting, which is from a place called Marganhalli. And there are three deities sitting here who seated in this very ornate, Mysore painting. This is a very small painting, 20 by 24. Of course, it's in the register style. On the top, you can see the three goddesses sitting. And from your left is Uchamma Navaru. Then we have Marganhalli Patla Damma. Then we have Tagamma Navaru. And in the second register, you can see they are leading the buffaloes. And in the register below, you can see the buffaloes being beheaded as offering to the goddesses. This is another, we move on to a very interesting painting. This is a very large format painting in a very composite painting of the Sampurna Ramayana at the Government Museum, Bangalore. This is a very small panel from it. This is a large frame which encompasses many small paintings which have been individually framed, and it is made into a large painting of Sampurna Ramayana. And here you see Saraswati, Brahma and Narada, which is a section of the painting. This is a fantastic specimen of Samudra Mathana, that is the churning of the ocean. It's at the San Diego Museum in USA. And this could be a part of a larger book which has been scattered. We see below the painting, you see there is a Kannada script identifying the gods and the demons. This is a very beautiful large format painting from Suttur Mutt in Mysore. It's Saparivara Panchamukha Parameshwara, that is the five-headed Shiva with his entire family. And in the borders, in the central figure is Panchamukha Parameshwara, and around the painting is the Panchavimshati Leela Murti, that is the 25 Leelas or the avatars of Shiva. Just like the Leelas of Krishna, you have the Leelas of Shiva. And this is a painting, a very, very rare subject in a very large format in miniature style. And it belongs to the Suttur Mutt. We move on to this very unusual painting. Today is Narasimha Jayanti. We see this painting of Bhairundeshwara, who is subduing Narasimha. After Narasimha, vanquishes Hiranyakashipu, his anger doesn't subside, and Shiva takes the form of Bhairundeshwara and subdues Narasimha. You can see at the feet of Bhairundeshwara, Narasimha is lying, his anger is subdued. And this is from this very unusual painting is in a private residence of G. Nandakumar at Tiptur in Tumkur district of Karnataka. We have this amazing painting of Dharmaraya Pattabhisheka at the National Museum. This is again a large format painting of 30 inches by 24 inches. You see Yudhishthira and Draupadi seated on the throne onto your right hand side, just below a white umbrella. We have another umbrella under which is seated Krishna and Arjuna. This is this painting in Mysore school is known as Dharmaraya Pattabhisheka or Krishna's Agra Puja. The first puja that is offered by Yudhishthira is to Krishna after he is coronated, after the Kauravas are vanquished. You can see the detailing. Krishna is in Vyakhyana Mudra. He is blessing Yudhishthira and giving him the rules of kingship. He's in the Vyakhyana Mudra, and just seated beside him is Arjuna. This is a painting of Buddha Avatara, which is a part of Dashavatara. This is from the Hastashilpa Museum at Manipal in Udupi district of Karnataka. Of course, this was established by Vijayanath Shenoy, and this houses a sizable collection of Tanjore and Mysore painting, and also the printing press of Ravi Verma. This is another very unusual painting and fantastic miniature specimen of the Mysore school, and very, very unusual subject. This is the subduing of the brilliance of Surya. Right on the top at the center, you see Vishwakarma, and this is a painting where Vishwakarma's daughter marries Surya, the sun, and he is so brilliant, and she is unable to bear the brilliance of Surya, and she requests her father to subdue the brilliance of Surya so that she is able to lead a normal life. And you can see here, I'm going to move to the next slide. You can see here Vishwakarma's son Manu Brahma has taken the sun in his hands, and he is subduing the brilliance using a tool. And what happens there is, what do you do with the power that is generated? The brilliance of Surya is made into weapons, and it is offered to all these gods and goddesses who are in attendance. This is a very rare subject from the Mysore school. We move on to next painting of this is Rama and Lakshmana who pay obeisance to Shiva. This is from the Shiva Gita, and this is at the Mariappa's Rama Mandira at a place called Virangere in Mysore. A fantastic composition, because this gives you an idea about the kind of subjects that were painted in the Mysore school. Of course, we have a large number of paintings of Jain subjects, especially in the Jain belt of Karnataka and Hassan and parts of Shumaga and Chikmagalur, where rich merchants belonging to the Jain community who patronize the Mysore school. We have Kumbharaja, then we have in the center Mallinatha Tirthankara and Prajapati Devi. This is from the Folklore Museum at the University of Mysore. This is a group portrait of artists who worked in the Mysore Palace Atelier. This is a painting from the Kuldeep Singh collection. My colleague Raghu Dharmendra has identified the artists. And this is a very rare, unique painting from the Royal Atelier. It was perhaps made for the king or perhaps a rich patron, or I don't know, because it shows 5 important artists who worked in the atelier of Krishnaraj Vadeyar III and Chamraj Vadeyar the 10th. Now we see the identification of the artists. Right on to your left in Vyakhyana Mudra is Gottugara Tippanna. Now Gottugara in Kannada means the head or the supervisor of the painting section of the palace. His name is Tippanna. So Gottugara is his job. Then we have Avaduta Papanna, who was a mystic following the Shaiva tradition, but he was an artist as well. Then we have a very famous artist, Venkata Subbu. We are going to see a very fine specimen by Venkata Subbu. Then we have Chitragara Channa Krishna. Then we have Chitragara Narayanappa. This is the original painting. These are the artists who have been identified. We move on to the individual artists. This is Gottugara Tippanna. His grandfather was an artist. His father was an artist. His grandson was a celebrated artist who painted in oils. And this is a beautiful genealogy of the Vadeyar kings in the collection of Chitra Kala Parishad at Bangalore. It says Santana Ambuja, that's the genealogy of the Mysore king, which was painted by Gottugara Tippanna. Then we have another artist from the same group. This is Narayana. And then you can see that on the top hand corner, the artist says, this is the portrait of Krishnaraja Vadeyar Maharaja. And it has been painted by Ramanaji's son R. Narayana. That is what is written in Kannada. You can see right above the head of the king, there are those dashes. He didn't want his name to come, above the head of the king. And that is why he's put the dash and, ended his name, on the right-hand side of the painting. This is a painting in the collection of the Ram Singh Museum. This is again Chitragara Venkata Subbu. What you see on the left-hand side on the top is a young Chitragara Venkata Subbu. This is in a album of portraits from the reign of Krishnaraj Vadeyar Krishnaraj Vadeyar III. And the painting that you see here, this is the coronation of Chamraj Vadeyar the 10th. And what you see here is an older Venkata Subbu. And this painting is in the Jayachamrajendra Art Gallery at Mysore. We are going to see the detailing of the coronation of the king of Mysore. This is a complete painting. This is actually the main gallery in Jagan Mohan Palace, which has been now converted into an auditoria. And this painting shows the British resident, the Dalwais, the Palegars who ruled under the king, and of course the boy king himself. The artists who painted these paintings, I'm sure you would want to know who they were. And they belong to the Kshatriya Raju community. This is an artist who painted during the reign of Krishnaraj Vadeyar III, Veeranna, his son Yallappa, then his son Sundaraya, his son Yallaya again, then his son Subramanya Raju, and his son Krishnananda Raju. This is just to give you an idea about the artists who painted, and you can see their headgear, and many of the headgears match the kind of headgear that was worn by the kings. The reason is the palace had an etiquette. On important days, they had to wear the clothes in a particular fashion with a particular headgear. This is just to give an idea about Sundaraya's work. This is a painting in the collection of S. Murugan of Bangalore. He's an IPS officer, and this is Gauri in worship, a fantastic specimen. He has not used gold, but the effect is stunning. This is another artist, Tipaji of Shikaripur from Shumoga, and he was a very celebrated artist of the Mysore court. And you can see this painting, which is a breathtaking specimen of the Mysore school in register style. We'll just go into very quickly. We'll go into the details. This is a Madhva tradition. It shows onto your left-hand side, it shows Hanuman worshipping Rama. Then we have Bhima worshipping Krishna. And of course, Madhvacharya worshipping Vedavyasa. So the belief is that Vedavyasa was an earlier avatar of Bhima, and who was an earlier avatar of Hanuman. This is again, you saw that Rama Mandira on the first floor. This is a specimen from that Rama Mandira. This is the Ramalingeshwara Sthapana at Rameshwaram. And you can see Rama and Sita worshipping the linga there. And this is by another very celebrated artist, Durga the Venkatappa of Mysore, who was the brother of Durga the Krishnappa, who was also a celebrated artist. We're going to see a specimen by Durga the Krishnappa in the course of this presentation. This is again a very rare subject. This is the wedding of Matsigandhi and Shantanu. This is by Nagu Palli Narayanappa, who was a disciple of Navalagiri Venkatappa. This is in the Folklore Museum of the University of Mysore. It is not only the artists, they belong to the traditional Chitragar community. Of course, every rule has an exception. We saw Tepaji, who belonged to the Maratha community. We also have Avaduta Papanna, who belong to the Brahmin community. And then we have this artist Parashuram Ala Singhachar, who has done this Sudarshana Ramayana. You can see his portrait again. This is from an album from the period of Krishnaraj Vadaya III. This is displayed at the house of the Kargam family at Melkote, and you can see the artist is signed. I'm going to show you a closer. This is the painting, the Ramayana and the Sudarshana Chakra form, and this is signature. Some very interesting developments have taken place, and a lot of experimentation has been done. And we have this kind of diptych paintings, which is a forced symmetry. These are twin Saraswati paintings from the Rama Mandira at Srirangapatna in Mandya district of Karnataka. The actual painting, the artist has just flipped the template and just painted it. And this is actually displayed in this way. At the entrance of the door, on either sides it is displayed, and you see many paintings like this of Krishna, of Lakshmi. Then we also have Saraswati, Lakshmi, like these kind of forced symmetry paintings. Very unusual painting is what we usually see is the next painting. This is from the Padavarhalli Rama Mandira. This is a story narration in the register style, and this is the wedding of Rama and his brothers. You can see in each of the ornate pavilions, the four brothers are getting married, and of course on the top and the lower register we have small episodes from Ramayana. And we move on to the next slide. This is a very unusual painting with at the National Heritage Board Museum at Singapore. This is a dancer along with the musician who's giving the count. who's known as Natuangar. And we move on to, there was a decline in the Mysore style of painting because artists were not able to find patrons, where prints which were available at a low price came into the market. You see here onto your left-hand side, this is an oleograph by Raja Ravi Verma. And then we have a similar painting by Venkatram, which is almost exactly a copy of the same subject. Of course, the artist has added some elements of the Mysore school and made to look like an actual painting. But this is drawn inspiration from a very famous oleograph of Raja Ravi Verma. Closer home, we see another specimen. Onto your left-hand side, this is an, oleograph of Shilpi Siddhanti Siddhalinga Swami, who was the Rajguru of the last Maharaja of Mysore. And you see a painting which is similar to that. The artist tried to compete with the prints. Perhaps the prints were available for 5, 8, 10 rupees, and the artist painted them for 5, 8, 10 rupees. You can imagine what is the kind of difficulty they had sustaining the art form. We move on to another living tradition of artists. This is onto your right-hand side below is artist Srihari. And on the top is Tirupalli Raju, who was an artist who lived in the Nanjangud area of Mysore district. And his disciple is K. Venkatram, who happens to be Srihari's grandfather. And next to him is K.V. Sita Raman, who happens to be the son of Venkatram and father of Srihari. I'm showing you this set of photographs because you will understand when I show you the next slide, the kind of templates that are used and the kind of reproductions that are done from the templates. You can see this is a painting of the same subject, that is a Vrishaba Aruda Murti. 1930s, Venkatraman has done this. The centerpiece is in the 1970s by K.V. Sitaraman. And onto your right-hand side is a painting in the Ram Singh Museum by K. Srihari in 1996. This spans almost 70 years. These are the artists, and this is the outcome from the same set of templates. Just to introduce the senior artists, the senior most artists practicing the Mysore school is B.P. Ramakrishna. He's in his 80s. He still paints. He's a self-taught artist, and he has trained his son, who's continuing the tradition. I told you about Durgada Venkatappa. This is a painting by Durgada Krishnappa, who is the elder brother of Durgada Venkatappa. And you can see he has signed this particular painting, which was done in 1893. What is very unusual about this is when I give you a close-up, it says Durgam Krishnappa, medley artist, 1893, that is the year, 4 is the month, and 25 is the date. I go back to the painting. This is by Durgada Krishnappa. He says he's won a medal, and the medal is at the Parliament of Religions at Chicago, where artworks were sent by the princely states of India. When you see the oil portrait of Ravi Verma, you see he's wearing a medal. The same medal was also awarded to Durgada Krishnappa, who sent the painting on behalf of the princely state of Mysore. So he very proudly states that he is a medal-winning artist. We move on to the next painting. This is in the title card of the invitation that was sent to you. This is by Javagal Narasimhaya. Javagal is, of course, the place where he came from, and the earlier painting, Durgada Krishnappa. He came from Chitradurga. Durga in Kannada means fort. It was a fortress bastion, and that is Durgada Krishnappa. Now, Javagal Narasimhaya came from a place called Javagal in present-day Hassan district of Karnataka. You can see his signature here. It says Chitragar Javagal Narasimhaya Baradiddu. That means to say this is a painting by artist Javagal Narasimhaya. These are some of the earlier specimens of the Mysore School of Painting in the Ram Singh Museum. And this is from the period 1820s. You can see the application of the gold. The entire sheet of gold is applied onto the paper, and where it is not required, they have covered it with paint. The later technique is they applied it on the spot. So you can see the old technique and the new technique which blossomed in the court. This is another specimen of Rajarajeshwari from the Ram Singh Museum. This is Anant Padmanabha. And my colleague Raghu has identified the artist, Nagupalli Narayanappa. And of course, the artists, like I told you earlier, they painted in the mural format, miniature, manuscripts, Ganjifa cards. They also painted on furniture, then portraits, schematic maps. They painted on musical instruments, scrolls, and glass paintings. And of course, we also have several specimens of game boards and divination boards. This is a Navagraha Prashnapata. So this is a divination board from the Mysore school. The technique of divination is, you sit in front of the board and at the auspicious time, close your eyes, take a flower and place it in one of the boxes. And then when you open your eyes and see the number just below, it gives you the, what is in store for you on that day. So this is a divination board, which is a very unique thing, what you see in the Mysore School of Painting. And we come to the end of the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aji, for that. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
No, no questions. I find a lot of similarity between miniature schools of East and South India. Only the stylization is different. When you use the word Ganjam at the beginning, there's a place called Ganjam in Orissa.
Okay.
Which is the Kalingas. The Kalingas also went to Vijayanagar. So there was no border between Karnataka, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Orissa, etc. They were royal families, and when they got married, when they exchanged and shared their culture also, their music, their painting, and everything. And I find a lot in the Mysore painting. They imbibed a lot of realism from the Western, from the colonial period, and perspective, which was not there in any miniature school
That's
in the
later.
country, much later. So I would like to request you to also talk a little bit between Tanjore painting and the Mysore school. A little bit.
How do you distinguish between the two?
No, sharing. They've shared a lot. And I think Tanjore school is much older, isn't it?
No, they are almost contemporaries. The subjects in both the schools are almost similar. And what is unique about each of the schools is the Mysore school was done mostly on board, and earlier it was done on a skeletal frame on which they stretched the mull cloth and on which they pasted the paper. But the Tanjore school, most of it was done on neem board, thick neem board on which they spread the cloth, and which actually binded the painting. And they did it on a thick board because they used the real gemstones, and it had to hold. So to hold that, they wanted a firm base. So for that, they used those boards made of neem wood. The Mysore school, the jewelry and the coloring and the shading was done through, painting only. And they did not require that kind of a stiff support behind. And most of the paintings of the Mysore school, especially during the period from about 1840 till about 1940s, these are, the vasli is made of British or French newspapers stuck on one on top of another, made into a thick board, and on that they have used white paper, and then the vasli has been prepared in that technique, and it is easy for us to date the paintings. My knowledge of Tanjore is less, so what I know I have told you. I might be wrong somewhere. My knowledge of Mysore I can share more.
Handle the human figures a little more realistically.
Pardon me?
They handle the human figures more realistically,
yes.
Dimension, perspective, etc.
And what is unique about the Mysore school is we had continuous patronage till independence, but because the Tanjore school did not have patronage because of the doctrine of lapse. They did not have a male progeny, and the kingdom lapsed into the British Empire after the time of Sarfoji. Sarfoji was, of course, an important person. In 1831, it went back to British rule, and the royal patronage was not there. The patronage was by monasteries, temples, and rich merchants belonging to Karakudi, that the Chettinad families actually, patronized the Tanjore paintings. But the Mysore, we had this royal patronage, and most of the citizens of Mysore, what they did was they actually copied the lifestyle of the royal family in the form of dress, religious practices, jewelry, and especially the turbans, because the talk about the turbans itself can take 2 hours. That is the kind of turbans we are having, and each of the kings made a style statement by, tying a new type of turban on his coronation, including the present king. He actually changed the style of the turban for his coronation. You can see all these kings, it has all been recorded, especially the last 6 kings. You can see the turban takes a very different take in the Mysore cultural milieu.
The royal patronage, like in Puri, in Orissa, all the seva which is done, whether by Pandit, by painter, by dancer, by musician, they're all given land. And they do their seva. They are not paid any money.
Okay.
And for generations, they've got their land, and because of which they do their seva at the temple. So the royalty and the temple, they are also hand in hand. But do you have something like that in Karnataka?
Yes.
Where they're given land
yes.
to survive?
Yes.
So that is the kind of patronage.
The most of the temples have large land holdings, for agricultural produce, for the daily worship, for the flowers and the fruits. But of course, now it is in government hands, and that system is not working. That system is not working, but the lands are with the government. And we see this in a fantastic example. If I want to give you from the Surpur royal family, they patronized a family which went by the name Garudadri, and they were given land. And the patrons of the persons who received the patronage by the Surpur royal family, they actually, that kingdom was also lost because of the doctrine of lapse. But even today, most of the paintings carry this legend that they were patronized by the Garudadri family. And in the Tirupati temple, the present day Tirupati temple, on the Brahmotsavam day, the first worship, the privilege goes to the Surpur royal family, just like the Puri family at the Jagannatha temple. They are offered the first rite of worship, and they are given the cloth that is offered to the Lord. It is known as the Sheshavastra. That is the Sheshavastra, which is tied onto the the Lord, onto his waist, is actually tied on the head of the Surpur royal family as a mark of honor. So these traditions continue. And there is also, of course, this is nothing to do with painting. Just because you mentioned the royal patronage, I am telling you this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that anyone has for RJ Singh? Please just go ahead, if you can unmute yourself and ask away. Anyone?
Hi, sir. This is Hima from London, actually. So there is always a struggle to learn this painting, and any recommendations, like, okay, like visiting India and doing it, of course, one of the option, but is there any other recommendations, or you can suggest any names so that we can reach out to learn? Thank you.
This is a question for me.
Yes.
Okay. Of course, you can, if you know the basics, you can learn online, because right now, two artists, one is BP Ramakrishna and another artist Anand, are doing online classes to their students across India, and of course, a couple of students from Europe. So if you know the basics, you've learned the rudimentary aspects of the school, it can be learnt online. And Ramakrishna is teaching, Anand is teaching. Both of them are teaching. If you want the details, you can send me a private message. I'll give you the phone numbers.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to come in, please.
Yes,
My
please.
name is Lakshmi Krishnamurthy. I'm a traditional artist who is a research, restoration, documentation of all pan-Indian art forms when using the natural colors and the methodology. And I've been heading the visual art department in Kalakshetra, and I've done an extensive research work on this, and your input and intervention Tanjore few states grows plentifully at the backyard, weathered nicely. That was what was used for Tanjore painting. Of course, we didn't. We stick a piece of paper to give it a solidarity. Coated another cloth and then coated with chalk powder and gum. Now it used to be chalk powder, tamarind seed, the skin removed, and then the pulp ground that was used as a additive. So that's how it was done. And Maratha Empire, when Shivaji was able to win over Aurangzeb, the north-south corridor open. That's how the maximum input of miniature tradition, gold foiling, gilding, all these kind of applications came into vogue. We had the blessing of Sarfoji being a title king who was a very great scholar, and the Maratha kind of Tanjavur painting is started. The same Maratha ruler, Mysore school started in, of course, those days the areas were not marked like this. It was depends on the whoever was ruling on their dynasty. So there was a lot of commonality, but the climate, available materials, everything played a part. Even the people, architectural details, everything played a part in their painting. So that's what got reflected. Karnataka being an inland, it was dry, not humid, so they were able to use the Mysore barak, like the thin gold kind of a powdery film, which is applied for the sweets and all. But Tamil Nadu being a very humid area, we can't touch it because it'll all stick to us. We'll get gold foil instead of the painting. So it was put on a backing paper, so we can cut it, trim it, and do all that. And we did a coating of makku on the cloth so that, when we apply the relief work, of course, as he rightly said, because we were using a lot of gems, so it had to be a little hardboard, plus it had to have that little bit of thickness to push them in. The oldest painting, if you can see, they're all available in Madras Museum or Egmore Museum now called, was with blue-gray background, very little painting, very little gold work, more painting, and gradually they evolved into little more of gold work, and people could afford real gems, so that started coming in. And then the decline, or the last phase, when it started becoming a tool to be taken or a token of abroad, for the visitors, then the school became what it is now today, too much of gold and one dark background. So that is the decline phase. There are three phases. First is minimum gold work and maximum painting. And then third was what is very popularly known as the traditional painting of Tanjavur right now in the commercial market. Mysore has a lot of flexibility and dancing kind of a sorry.
Good.
Okay, it had the Tribanga movements and other things, whereas Tanjavur seems to have a little more stiff atmosphere. But the whole concept, the whole idea is according to the local color, the turban, as he rightly said, the style of dress, the people faces, the architecture were more from Maratha school, whereas for Mysore it was Tipu Sultans and Vadias, whatever was, all those elements came in.
Thank you, Lakshmiji. Yeah.
Yes.
I think no, because the network is a bit it's a bit patchy. But I think what you said is very informative, and I think that's the beauty of having a question answer, because you seem to be a fount of knowledge who's able to give a lot more kind of background to it in a way that a lot of us who don't know about it. And we would love to share, I think if you can reach out to us and to RG, we will share our contacts in the chat group before we sign off. But we have time.
I'll do that right away.
Yeah, we have time
I'll do that.
Thank you. And we have time for only one last question if someone has, before we wrap up.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm also putting our contact details here for everyone to reach out. Is there anyone else who has one last question or any other thing they would like to say? I have a lot of questions, but I didn't want to hog any of the time, so I haven't. But thank you very much, RG Singh, for this. It has been a very informative talk. And, a lot of us often who are lay people don't know the difference between Tanjore painting and Mysore painting. And I think that is, one feels there must be a shared parentage in some ways, but I think the nuances we didn't know of. So I think that was really amazing. And, also the lineage of artists and this kind of tradition of court painters. So thank you very much. And we have hopefully a very interesting and a very different speaker in our next session, which will be, I think, on 11th June, which is the second Saturday. So all our sessions are always on second Saturdays, and that will be most likely, I hope she confirmed, which is Amba Sanyal, speaking on Bhavesh Sanyal, her father, who was a doyen of Indian art while as India was becoming independent, and he lived for a long life, which was a lovely, rich life. And thank you again very much.
Namba Sanyal is also an artist.
Yes.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And everyone, please do reach out to us, and we will also, this whole illustrated lecture will be available for everyone on YouTube on the same link that you've got. And you can just go to the JDCA channel online and have access to the talk. So thank you very much.